It is midnight over the vast dark expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The date is September 27, 2025. Far below, the waves churn in silent indifference. High above, something new and threatening cuts through the thin air. A Chinese H-6N bomber, flying at the edge of space, glides undetected through what was once considered secure American airspace. It is a ghost on radar, a phantom carrying a weapon that redefines the very nature of modern warfare. This isn't just a patrol, it's a statement. A silent, high-altitude declaration that the old rules of military power no longer apply to this new world. Attached to the bomber's underbelly is the reason for this newfound audacity: the JL-1 air-launched ballistic missile. For years it was a rumored project, a specter in intelligence reports. Now, it is a reality, a tangible threat pointed directly at the heart of the United States. This single aircraft, armed with this single missile, holds the power to strike cities like Los Angeles, Seattle, or Honolulu with little to no warning. The bomber itself is a formidable piece of engineering, but the weapon it carries is what truly transforms the strategic landscape, making the unthinkable suddenly and frighteningly plausible. The very presence of this bomber in this location represents a colossal failure of American intelligence and defensive systems. The H-6N, with its advanced stealth coatings and electronic warfare suites, has slipped past a multi-trillion-dollar network of satellites, long-range radars, and interceptor bases. It is a stark and chilling demonstration of a capability gap that Pentagon officials have feared, but were perhaps unwilling to fully acknowledge. The era of unchallenged American dominance over the skies and seas is officially over. The Pacific is no longer an American lake. It is a contested battleground where the stakes have been raised to an apocalyptic level. For the crew inside the H-6N, the mission is a testament to China's meteoric military rise. They are the vanguard of a new strategic doctrine, one that seeks not just to defend China's borders, but to project its power across the globe. Their flight path is a carefully calculated message, demonstrating that China can now hold American soil at risk from mobile, unpredictable launch platforms. This single silent flight through the midnight sky does more to alter the balance of power than a dozen military parades. It announces, with terrifying clarity, the dawn of a new and far more dangerous era of nuclear competition. The JL-1 is not just another missile in China's rapidly growing arsenal, it is a fundamental game-changer. It represents a technological leap that directly challenges the foundations of U.S. national security. For decades, America's defense strategy has relied on its ability to detect and intercept incoming ballistic missiles, primarily those launched from fixed, predictable locations on land. The JL-1 shatters this paradigm entirely. Launched from a bomber that can roam anywhere over the vast Pacific, its point of origin is constantly moving and impossible to pinpoint in advance. This mobility makes it a uniquely terrifying weapon in the world today. What makes the Pentagon's admission so startling is the frank acknowledgement of its own vulnerability. In a recent heavily guarded briefing, military leaders conceded that the United States currently has no reliable defense against the JL-1. The missile's unique trajectory and advanced features render existing interceptor systems, like the ground-based mid-course defense, largely ineffective. This is not a problem that can be solved with a simple software update or by building more interceptors. It is a deep, systemic failure in the face of a weapon that was designed specifically to exploit every known weakness in American missile defense architecture. The psychological impact of this admission cannot be overstated. It creates a sense of helplessness that has not been felt in America since the early days of the Cold War. The idea that a hostile power could launch a nuclear strike that is, for all intents and purposes, unstoppable, is a profound shock to the national psyche. It forces a complete reevaluation of what it means to be secure. The defensive shield that Americans have spent decades and trillions of dollars to build has been proven to be a porous net, easily bypassed by China's latest innovation in offensive weaponry. This new reality has sent shockwaves through the strategic community. Analysts and policymakers are scrambling to understand the full implications of the JL-1. It is more than just a military threat. It is a diplomatic cudgel that gives Beijing unprecedented leverage in any international dispute. China can now credibly threaten a direct strike on the U.S. homeland in a way it never could before. This capability fundamentally alters the risk calculus for American leaders, making any confrontation with China, particularly over an issue like Taiwan, exponentially more dangerous and unpredictable than ever before. For most of the nuclear age, China's nuclear posture was defined by a doctrine of minimal deterrence. The country maintained a relatively small, land-based arsenal of intercontinental ballistic missiles and a nascent fleet of ballistic missile submarines. The primary goal was simple: to possess just enough nuclear firepower to survive a first strike and retaliate against an aggressor's cities. This force was seen as purely defensive, designed to deter an attack on China itself, not to project power globally. It was a credible but limited deterrent, one that Washington felt it understood and could manage effectively. The introduction of the JL-1 missile carried by the H-6N bomber marks the final and most crucial piece of China's nuclear triad. A nuclear triad consists of three distinct launch platforms: land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, sea-based submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and air-launched weapons like the JL-1. By completing this triad, China has moved far beyond its old doctrine of minimal deterrence. It now possesses a robust, redundant, and highly survivable nuclear force on par with those of the United States and Russia. This is not just a quantitative increase in power. It is a qualitative transformation of its strategic capabilities. The air-launched leg of the triad provides unique advantages that the other two legs lack. While fixed missile silos are vulnerable and submarines can be tracked, bombers offer unparalleled flexibility. They can be deployed visibly during a crisis to send a strong political signal, held on high alert near enemy airspace, or recalled at the last minute if tensions de-escalate. This gives Chinese leaders a range of options between doing nothing and launching an all-out nuclear war. The JL-1, as the airborne component, makes China's nuclear deterrent far more credible and its command and control much more adaptable in a crisis. This evolution from a minimal deterrent force to a full-fledged nuclear triad signals a profound shift in China's global ambitions. It is the clearest sign yet that Beijing no longer sees itself as a regional power but as a global superpower with interests to defend across the world. A nation that invests so heavily in a survivable second strike capability is a nation preparing to assert itself on the world stage with much greater confidence. The completed triad is the ultimate insurance policy, allowing China to pursue its geopolitical goals, from the South China Sea to Africa, with the knowledge that it is shielded by a formidable nuclear umbrella. The JL-1 missile is a marvel of military engineering, purpose-built to be as lethal and unstoppable as possible. Its design features represent a convergence of several advanced technologies, making it far more than a simple ballistic weapon. First and foremost is its impressive range. With a reach estimated at over 8,000 kilometers, the missile, launched from an H-6N bomber patrolling the mid-Pacific, can easily strike any target in the western half of the United States. This extended range gives the bomber crew a massive operational area, making it nearly impossible for adversaries to predict where a strike might originate from. Furthermore, intelligence reports strongly suggest that the JL-1 is capable of carrying multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, or MIRVs. This means a single missile can carry 3 or more nuclear warheads, each capable of striking a different target. The use of MIRVs acts as a force multiplier, allowing one bomber to threaten several cities or military installations simultaneously. It also serves to overwhelm missile defense systems, which would be forced to track and intercept multiple incoming warheads traveling at hypersonic speeds. This feature alone makes any successful defense incredibly difficult and exponentially more complex for defenders. Adding to its lethality is the JL-1's rumored hybrid technology. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles that follow a high, predictable arc through space, the JL-1 is believed to fly a depressed trajectory. It stays within the upper atmosphere for a longer portion of its flight, making it harder for long-range early warning radars to detect. Speculation also points to its potential use as a high-speed anti-ship ballistic missile. This dual capability would allow the H-6N to target not only cities on land, but also American aircraft carrier strike groups at sea, effectively holding the U.S. Navy's most valuable assets at risk from thousands of kilometers away. This combination of long-range, MIRV capability, and a non-traditional flight path creates a weapon system that is uniquely tailored to exploit the seams in U.S. defenses. The designers of the JL-1 clearly studied American missile defense architecture and engineered a weapon to bypass it at every stage. It is not an evolution of existing missile technology but a revolutionary step forward, designed for a new era of strategic competition. The JL-1 is the sharp, powerful claw of the Chinese dragon, capable of striking with devastating speed and precision from an unexpected direction, leaving its victims with no time to react. The JL-1 missile is, honestly, exceptionally difficult for U.S. defenses to detect and intercept due to a confluence of factors that attack the very logic of American missile defense. The primary problem really begins with detection. U.S. early warning systems, including the Space-Based Infrared System or SBIRS satellites, are optimized to detect the intense heat bloom of a large ballistic missile launching from a fixed silo. But an air-launched missile like the JL-1, dropped from a bomber already in flight, has a much smaller and shorter-lived thermal signature. It's a fainter signal in a sky already filled with noise, making it so much easier to miss during those crucial first moments after launch. Once launched, the missile's trajectory presents an even greater challenge. Traditional intercontinental ballistic missiles travel high into the vacuum of space, following a predictable parabolic arc. This gives ground-based radars a long time to track the warhead and calculate an intercept course. The JL-1, however, is believed to fly a much flatter, depressed trajectory, staying within the Earth's upper atmosphere. This keeps it below the horizon of many ground-based radars for a longer period, drastically shortening the warning time available to defenders. By the time it is finally detected, it's much closer to its target, and moving at hypersonic speeds, leaving mere minutes to attempt an interception. This compressed timeline pretty much renders the current U.S. ground-based mid-course defense system, or GMD, almost obsolete against this specific threat. The GMD system was designed for mid-course interception, hitting a missile while it is coasting through space. The JL-1's trajectory largely bypasses this phase. It forces a terminal phase interception, where defenders must hit a warhead as it plummets towards its target. This is an infinitely harder task, honestly akin to hitting a bullet with another bullet, and the existing Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, and Patriot systems have a limited geographic footprint, and were not designed to stop strategic warheads aimed at the homeland. Finally, the combination of the H-6N bomber's stealth capabilities and the missile's advanced design creates a layered defensive nightmare. The bomber itself is hard to track, meaning the launch point is a mystery. The missile launch is hard to detect, the trajectory is hard to predict and track. And even if it is tracked, the potential use of MIRVs and decoys means defenders have to sort through multiple objects to find the real warheads. Every single stage of the kill chain, from detection to tracking to interception, is compromised. The JL-1 is, a ghost in the machine, a weapon that just seems to flow through the cracks of a system never designed to stop it. Imagine for a moment a tense standoff in the Taiwan Strait. China, claiming the island as a renegade province, has initiated a naval blockade, cutting off access to its ports. The United States, bound by treaty and, strategic interest, dispatches several aircraft carrier strike groups to the region to ensure freedom of navigation and deter a full-scale invasion. In previous years, the presence of the U.S. Navy would have been a decisive check on Beijing's ambitions. The implicit threat of overwhelming American military power would have forced a de-escalation. But in 2025, with the JL-1 now operational, the entire strategic equation has been turned on its head. In this scenario, as U.S. and Chinese naval forces face off, Beijing issues a stark warning. It declares a no-fly zone, not just over Taiwan, but extending hundreds of miles into the Pacific. To back up its words, it dispatches a squadron of H-6N bombers on patrols deep into the ocean. They don't approach the American fleet directly. Instead, they loiter in international airspace, thousands of kilometers away, each carrying a JL-1 missile. Their message is clear and unspoken. If the United States intervenes militarily to break the blockade, it risks a retaliatory strike not just on its ships, but on its own homeland. This creates, honestly, an impossible dilemma for the President of the United States. Should they order the U.S. Navy to engage Chinese forces and risk a nuclear strike on San Diego or Seattle? The JL-1's ability to bypass missile defenses means the threat is not a bluff. It is a credible and frankly terrifying possibility. The presence of those H-6N bombers circling like vultures far over the horizon paralyzes American decision-making. The risk of losing a carrier is one thing, the risk of losing an American city is another entirely. The JL-1 effectively decouples the defense of Taiwan from the defense of the U.S. homeland, forcing a terrible choice. This is the real-world implication of China's new weapon. It grants Beijing a powerful tool of nuclear coercion, allowing it to escalate a regional conflict to a strategic intercontinental level at a moment's notice. The JL-1 gives China the ability to hold the American population hostage in a conflict over Taiwan, dramatically increasing the cost of U.S. intervention. In this reimagined crisis, the United States might be forced to stand down, leaving Taiwan to its fate. The JL-1 would have achieved a strategic victory for China without ever having been fired, redrawing the map of Asia through the sheer power of its potential. The operational deployment of the JL-1 missile introduces a level of profound uncertainty into U.S. military planning, creating what some analysts are calling a chaotic radar effect. This isn't about physical radar interference, but about the strategic fog of war. American commanders can no longer be certain where a threat might come from. A nuclear launch is no longer confined to a handful of known missile fields in mainland China. It could now originate from any point in a multi-million square mile area of the Pacific Ocean, patrolled by H-6N bombers. This unpredictability shatters decades of, carefully constructed defense calculations and response protocols. This chaos forces a radical shift in how the U.S. military must allocate its resources. To even attempt to counter this threat, the Pentagon would need to establish a 24/7 surveillance and patrol network across the entire Pacific. This would involve repositioning satellites, deploying more naval assets, and keeping fighter jets on constant alert, a logistical and financial undertaking of staggering proportions. Even with such an effort, the chances of successfully tracking every H-6N bomber at all times would be slim. The sheer vastness of the operational area works in China's favor, making the defensive challenge nearly insurmountable from the start. Moreover, the JL-1 forces a change in the rules of engagement and crisis management. If an H-6N bomber carrying a JL-1 is detected approaching U.S. airspace, what is the appropriate response? Does the U.S. attempt to shoot it down preemptively, risking an immediate escalation to all-out war? Or does it wait, hoping the bomber turns back, while running the risk of a surprise attack? These are questions with, honestly, no good answers. The ambiguity inherent in the system, a bomber can be used for conventional or nuclear missions, creates a dangerous potential for miscalculation, where a defensive move could be misinterpreted as an act of aggression. Ultimately, the JL-1's greatest impact is that it injects doubt into the heart of American strategic confidence. U.S. military superiority has long been built on information dominance and a predictable, manageable threat environment. China has weaponized uncertainty itself. By creating a threat that is mobile, hard to track, and nearly impossible to stop, Beijing has forced American planners into a constant state of reactive anxiety. They are no longer playing chess on a familiar board. They are navigating a chaotic landscape where the rules are constantly changing and the consequences of a single misstep are catastrophic. The emergence of the JL-1 and China's completed nuclear triad inevitably recalibrates the global balance of power and, honestly, probably heralds the beginning of a new, three-way nuclear arms race. For decades, the strategic calculus was primarily a bipolar affair between the United States and Russia, governed by a series of arms control treaties. China's rapid nuclear expansion and technological breakthroughs shatter this old dynamic. The world is no longer dealing with a two-player game, but a far more complex and unstable multipolar nuclear environment, where three major powers are actively modernizing and expanding their arsenals simultaneously. In response to China's growing capabilities, the United States will be under immense pressure to accelerate the modernization of its own nuclear forces. This includes not only upgrading its existing triad of Minuteman III ICBMs, B-21 bombers, and Columbia-class submarines, but also investing heavily in new defensive technologies. The Pentagon will likely pour billions into developing space-based sensors and directed energy weapons in a desperate attempt to create a defense that can counter threats like the JL-1. This action in turn will almost certainly be viewed by both China and Russia as a destabilizing move, prompting them to build even more offensive weapons to guarantee they can overwhelm any new American shield. This dynamic creates a dangerous action-reaction cycle. As the US builds up its defenses, China will build more JL-1S and other advanced missiles to ensure its deterrent remains credible. Russia, not wanting to be left behind, will follow suit, further developing its own hypersonic weapons and exotic delivery systems. The result is a classic security dilemma, where the steps one nation takes to increase its own security are perceived as threatening by its rivals, compelling them to respond in kind. This escalatory spiral makes every nation less secure and increases the overall risk of nuclear conflict through accident or miscalculation. The era of arms control, which brought a degree of stability to the Cold War, seems to be a distant memory. With treaties like the INF Treaty now defunct and little appetite for new agreements involving China, there are few guardrails to prevent this new competition from spiraling out of control. The JL-1 is not just a new weapon, it is a catalyst for a new, more perilous chapter in the nuclear age. It signals a shift away from strategic stability and toward a future defined by unchecked military competition, technological one-upmanship, and a constant, unnerving proximity to global catastrophe. The JL-1 missile is more than a piece of military hardware. It's a symbol of a fundamental shift in global power and, honestly, a harbinger of a more dangerous and uncertain future. It represents the culmination of China's decades-long effort to achieve military parity with the United States, and its successful deployment challenges the core tenets of American security that have held for generations. The uncomfortable truth for Washington is that the technological and geographic advantages it once took for granted have been eroded. The sense of security provided by two vast oceans has been rendered obsolete by a weapon that can strike from the midnight sky with near impunity. This new reality forces a painful reassessment of America's role in the world and its strategic posture toward China. The path forward is fraught with difficult choices. Does the US engage in a full-blown arms race, attempting to out-innovate and outspend China in a contest that will consume trillions of dollars and heighten global tensions? Or does it seek a new form of strategic stability, attempting to bring China into a new arms control framework to manage this complex three-way nuclear competition? Neither path offers an easy solution, and both are filled with immense risk and uncertainty. The broader consequences extend far beyond the US-China rivalry. The development of unstoppable offensive weapons like the JL-1 could inspire other nations to pursue similar capabilities, leading to a proliferation of advanced missile technology around the globe. The delicate balance of deterrence could be upset in other volatile regions, increasing the likelihood of regional conflicts escalating to the nuclear level. The world is entering an era where the old rules of deterrence are being rewritten on the fly, and the potential for catastrophic error is growing daily with each new technological advancement. Ultimately, the JL-1 and the future weapons that will inevitably follow it, hypersonic glide vehicles, AI-enabled drone swarms, and space-based weapons, mark the beginning of a new era of intense high-tech military competition. The future is unknowable, but the trajectory is clear: a world with more nuclear powers, more sophisticated and unstoppable weapons, and fewer diplomatic guardrails. The silent flight of that H-6N bomber over the Pacific was not just a test of a new missile, it was a profound warning. The world of 2025 is a far more dangerous place, and the challenge posed by China's rise will define international security for the remainder of the 21st century.